What is happening, everybody? Oh, welcome to Comic Book Corner 2.0. I'm your host, Mike Spider Slayer, bringing you a brand new series. It's called Comics and Cash, literally created yesterday. And this is with my good friend, Craig Sheets, who is actually a professional CPA. Say hi, Craig.
Hey guys, how you doing? I'm Craig Sheets, CPA. I've known Mike a long time. We go back 20 plus years, almost 20 years. Got to be close to that, I think.
Yeah, it's a long time. So Craig somehow, some way has always been into numbers. And the funny thing is it's like numbers first, tennis second. And
Yes.
and he's always had this job where he's like, yeah, I want to work at Disney and I want to work at, Lockheed Martin and I want to work at all these different places. And I'm like, Craig, like seriously, like why not just stick with tennis? Because obviously I am the head pro at my facility and I always needed his help, And so nevertheless, though, he's very good at his job and he's on this show because we're gonna have a little bit of some discussion when it comes to not only comic books, but maybe some finance stuff. So if you guys have some questions about accounting, or if you have your own businesses, or if you're looking for somebody to do your taxes, he's here for you. And so, like I said, this is going to be a monthly show where we talk maybe a little bit of different topics when it comes to maybe even the hobby and the financial like gains and losses, or maybe if you're a YouTuber as well and you're looking to get into it, how do you financially get into stuff like that? So yeah, man, I think this is kind of like it's an experiment for me. It's an experiment for Craig as well.
It
And
is.
maybe it'll get him into comics a little bit also.
Oh, he's drawing me into the
Yeah.
comic book side of things. Yes, I might start buying some. I remember I had that one comic book I showed you. It was like a Superman one. I thought it was like an original, and you're like, it was some kind
Yes.
of like knockoff one. It was a yellow one for my dad or something like that.
Yeah, see, it's so funny
And
because you say yellow one. So if you have comic fans out here and they're like, wait, it's a yellow one? Is it a Superman issue one? And it's kind of like one of those things where you're like, oh my God, do you have do you have a Superman issue one? Because then it's like, oh, you could have a book that's a lot of money. You know what I'm saying?
That's
So
what I thought. I brought it in to show it to you, and you're like, "Is it in a cover? It's yellow." I'm like, "I don't know. I'll just put it in my backpack." It's like, "Don't put it in your backpack." I said it might wrinkle
yeah,
up the page. Like, I don't know. It's a
exactly.
yellow. And you looked at it. It turned out to be some kind of like, it
It
wasn't
was
a
a
knockoff. It
reprint.
was, yeah, it was a reprint. That's what it was. And my dad thought it was worth tons. And like, I have no idea. And I showed it to you. We were laughing about it afterwards.
Oh, it was
That
hilarious.
was my foray into foray into comics. Yeah, I mean comic books. I remember when I was younger, a lot of my friends were into comic books, and I used to collect the comic books, and I love all the graphics. And I think like you were saying before, I have a podcast you were on earlier if people don't know it, and we talked about like in school, it was like a nice way, an introduction way to English. I always joke ESL, English is my second language. I was never really good at the grammar and the reading. I wasn't reading Shakespeare and all that kind of stuff, but when you see the comic books, it's in fun format. And having ADHD, you got the lights and you got the colors and you got all the different graphics. Like, oh, this is easy to read. It's fun to read. It's enjoyable, but at the same time you're reading. So I thought it was great, and I watched a lot of the shows you'd watched on Netflix, or if it's on Hulu or Disney.
Right.
A lot of the comic book series and some of the movies as well, but a lot of the series. So it's great to be part of that whole community.
Yeah, I mean, you make a good point when you talk about, because you do have ADHD, and you
Oh,
do
you're
make
right.
a good point in how uh, you know how it helps, because reading is not an easy thing for a lot of people, and one of these things for me was reading comprehension wasn't necessarily didn't come naturally for me.
Right.
And so, like you said, comic books were one of those things that where it's like, oh, I can look at pictures and read.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, I much rather do that because even to this day, comprehension for me is not always the easiest thing. And reading comics does definitely help that. And I feel like my YouTube channel has definitely helped out as well. It definitely helps in, sometimes it's kind of funny because I do have viewers of my channel. They try to help me grammatically, like spell things or
Oh, God.
say things, and I'm just
Right.
like, listen, I'm like, I don't mean to say things this way or the way it comes out of my mouth this way. It's just that's the way I am. You can tell
Right.
me 1,000 times how to say something, and it just doesn't physically come out of my mouth that way,
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I'm always sending texts and emails, and I have an office manager, which you may have met before, Peggy. But either way, shout out to Peggy. My office manager is always doing the same thing. She's like, "Look, you're a professional. You got to represent yourself that way." So what I do in that light is I end up having her edit everything I send out if it's an important email, because I'm like, "Look, I don't want to make a mistake, but I know what I'm trying to say. I get it. Like people will understand it." She's like, "Yeah, but you got to present it a certain way." But reading in the comic books and the storylines are so interesting. It's like it draws you in. You're reading like exciting new things, and it's like each new episode brings new exciting things that are happened to the characters. I think it's awesome. I love it. I think it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. So, besides that Superman comic, I gotta ask you,
Yeah.
what is your experience with comics?
What was the one? Was it Venom? Is that the one I'm thinking of? No, it was the one they made a movie on it with oh my God, I'm trying to think. He went down into like hell. He was like he's a creature between like heaven and hell, and they made a movie on it with. Oh my God, I knew you were going to ask me.
Is it Ghost Rider?
No, it's with oh my God, I knew you were going to ask, and I had the comic book ready to bring up today to say, oh, this was the comic I liked, and then as soon as I got in here, I got nervous and I forgot. It's like I'm gonna have to look it up. It's not Venom, but it's a Venom-esque type character. He had all those like chains that came out of his body.
Spawn.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the guy who wrote it was
his name is Todd McFarlane.
Michael McFarlane. Yes, that's the one I love the graphics in there and like the storyline. And then they made the movie. It's like that was wow. That's one of my faves, but Spider-Man's probably been always my favorite. I mean, I'm not saying it because that's your who you identify with, but Spider-Man to me, it's like a normal everyday person that turned into like something special. And I know there's other storylines like that, but I always thought Spider-Man was more identifiable to the average person. So I love Spider-Man's my first favorite, and then Spawn was kind of like, whoa, that's a crazy story.
Yeah, because he's darker, right?
Yes, very dark.
And it's kind of funny because that same writer actually wrote Spider-Man to kind of kick off his career. And then after he wrote Spider-Man, he did those Spawn comic books. So
wait, what? Oh, that's so crazy. That's my two favorite, and I didn't know. I should have known that.
So they're related. So it's kind of funny because when I was a kid and I was reading comics for the first time on a regular basis, and I went to the shop and buy them, that creator was writing and drawing the Spider-Man comics at the time. So it's kind of funny how it somehow connects, right? Isn't that wild?
Wild. I just happened to choose the same writer, and I didn't know that. I knew the writer for Spawn was, like you said, the name. I remember that name. Had no idea there was a connection with Spider-Man. That is wild.
Yeah, that's cool. So we got a few people in here so far today. Welcome to the show. We have Nothing at All, who's a first-time member. So thank you for joining the show. We also have Get the Key Comic as well, who's on the show, who also watches the other show I do, which is Comic Book Weekly. We also have the Neighborhood Merc. He says, "What's up?" And who else do we have on here so far today? We have, what a better way to start the day. Love from Chicago on the south
that
side.
Energy. That is great.
Ronan. And then we have Tevye, who is always on YouTube. He's like a huge supporter of like a lot of comic book shows. So good morning, Tevye, to you. And then we also had Tigger 3565, who's been a supporter of the channel a long time. And he answered your question, Craig. He goes, "Was it Spawn?" And so, he actually guessed right.
You nailed it. That was it.
Yeah.
You got it. It's cool how you highlighted everybody's name on there. That's great. You give shout outs personally. I
Yeah.
like that.
So that's how you do it. So give me a little bit about you. Well, who is Craig Sheets? So where do you come from? How did you get into accounting? Like, tell
Yeah,
me
this
a
is
little bit about like maybe your other hobbies too, besides
yeah.
numbers, because I know numbers is not always the most exciting thing.
No, I know. It's funny. This is payback because I had you on my podcast. I
Yeah.
did the same thing. No, it's good. So let me give you. I guess I'll start from way back when. I'm originally from Rochester, New York. It's funny when I tell people where I'm from, I immediately assume when I say New York, they think New York City. But I'm like, no, not quite. But
Yeah.
from Rochester, New York. I grew up. Funny enough, my dad had an RV business. He sold RVs and boats, so we got to travel a lot as a kid. My dad would get dealer of the week or month or year. What I probably should know more. Probably like what the heck. And we go to like all sorts of places, Australia and Hawaii and over to Greece, and they traveled a lot. I traveled a lot, so I was very well traveled as a child, which is lead into the story where I'm at now today. But I'm bringing this full circle to the travel part of it. But got to travel a lot. Went to school for funny enough, I had to go to school with people with ADHD. Got through all that kind of stuff because learning tools for what I have. Everybody thinks, oh, you all grow it, but you really don't. So I have to learn coping mechanisms and all that. And my parents were really a good advocate back in the 80s. ADHD didn't really exist as a diagnosis. It was kind of like,
Right.
oh, something, is it contagious? What's wrong with this guy?
Yeah. They're like, what's wrong with this dude? Yeah.
So my parents were a good advocate on the cutting edge, back in 1980, 79. It wasn't really a thing. And there's a new school in my town that was for people with that. And it helped a lot, so growing up, I like to have things with action and movement. So tennis to me was like, wow, this is a great sport. I tried soccer. I literally fell asleep during baseball. I couldn't even stay awake between innings. I'm like, oh, is it our turn to be at bat? But I got into tennis. I'm like, this is my sport. There's action. There's movement. We're never stopping. It was like, this is my kind of sport. I locked into it. And there's a club locally I played at, and I just fell in love with the sport. I think I started playing when they had the trapezoid wooden covers.
Oh my God.
Screws.
Seriously?
That was my first racket back in
Had that
1979.
tennis racket? Oh my God. That's hilarious.
Wish I still had it. Started in 79. Then I go and do the aluminum racket, then the ceramic. And I think anyways, but yeah, played through high school, I started my college team at Niagara University. Shout out to Niagara. I was the starting of the team, the captain and all that. So that was kind of a big accomplishment for me. And then from school, I went to school for accounting. It was kind of my love. It's funny. My dad had the boat dealership, RV dealership, and he'd like, look, there's a parts department, there's a sales department, there's a mechanics department, do what you want. And I'd walk around to the vending machines and I'd count money, and I'd sit at his big, huge conference room table playing with the money. And then after that, I'd go over to the accounting department. I'd help him like put invoices in sequential order. And my dad is like, what in God's name are you doing? You can go to any department you want, and you're sitting here putting invoices and numerical numbers and playing with money. I'm like, I don't know, I just like this kind of stuff. Like, what the heck? So I think I knew from a child I always liked accounting and numbers, strange as it sounds, but went to school, went off, got a job in a CPA firm, and then moved down to Orlando. And long story short, about 8 years later, 15 years ago, now I started my own CPA firm. And in between then, as Mike knows, much to his chagrin, I met a woman who's from Wales.
Nope.
And she and I would visit each other quite often.
Yeah.
So
when Craig worked for me,
I knew this was going to come up. Okay,
for
go
tennis
ahead.
teaching, it was for some reason Craig would always be like, he would tell me the last minute on all kinds of stuff. It was just like, hey, we got tennis camp starting 2 days right before camp. Mike, I got a new job, so I can't do camp. And I'm like, why would you not tell me this? Like,
it wasn't always like that. It was one time, but the
bunny
was I think the bunny was the worst one.
And then, but then it would be like, then he met his his wife, and
Yeah.
his wife is great. And
Yeah,
don't get
Louise
me
is
wrong.
awesome.
Yeah, Louise
But
is
she
great.
wanted me to visit all the time, and I'm trying to.
Yeah.
He doesn't realize I'm getting 50 to 60 text messages from her trying to hold her off, and all of a sudden I cave in. I'm like, okay, I'll come over. She'll buy the ticket for me, and I'm like, oh shit, I gotta explain this back to Mike now. Oh my god, I'm in a pickle now. And she jammed me into a corner. She's like, oh, you'll figure it out. I'm like, babe, I can't do this all the time. She just wanted to see me so much. She just buy me the ticket, and before I knew it, I'm like, I'm flying over in 10 days. I got to undo what the heck's going on at work now. So yeah, that was not funny.
Oh yeah.
Funny now. But yeah, so I travel a lot over to Wales. I work probably about 4 months of the year over here. I'm sitting here right now. But I work my hours, 1 p.m. till 10 at night, work my regular US hours. And my firm is virtual. We have 6 of us. And after the pandemic, I got rid of my office. I had an actual office downtown in Robinson and Orange. And I got rid of that office, and I really thought I'd get a lot of kickback from my clients, but weirdly enough, they were good with it. So I've kind of been virtual ever since. And we do taxes for businesses in UK, China, Canada. We do individuals, corporations, small business, everything from startup to, to 2 million. So we try to handle as much as we can, but we know when clients get too big, right? We're a smaller firm. We know to kind of pass it off. And I have a really good contact. I've been known 30 odd years that we usually hand those off to. But yeah, so I've been busy guy, but that's my quick synopsis from where I came from.
And you recently started up your own YouTube, or your firm started your own YouTube channel, correct?
Yeah, Behind Closed Books. If I can promote it, sorry, Mike.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why we're doing this.
Yeah, it's called Behind Closed Books, and what I'm doing is I'm interviewing and really talking to. It's not even really an interview. It's talking to and letting people who are business owners talk about their journey, successes they've gone through, failures as well, if they're vulnerable enough to talk about failures. But what I want people to do is learn the lessons from small business owners who are successful now to say, look, here's some pivot points. Here's some things we did well. Here's things we didn't do well. So if there are other business owners out there, they can learn and say, oh, wow, that's a good point. I should have a payroll person, or that's a good point. I need to track my staff's time, and I'm not managing my staff well. Whatever the topic is, a light bulb might go off in someone else's mind. So that podcast, I hope, if I can help one other person, that's always my goal.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a good thing, right? I mean, financial advice sometimes is hard to come by. So it's just like, and I know you've been doing it for a long time. So it's like one of those things where it's like, you're putting yourself out there now. So I just wanted to, try to help out with that,
No, it's weird. It's interesting because I always think like, geez, everybody knows what I know. And then I talk to other small business owners. I'm like, oh yeah, not everybody knows that. How can I get this across better? And, I do emails to my clients. We have one-on-ones, but, if I do a podcast and I can talk about topics that relate to small business owners, maybe that's a way to get it out there more and for people to kind of see different businesses talking about, not just me. It's not just me saying this. Look, here's someone else saying the same thing I am, of things that are important to grow and with your business. So,
right.
Every little helps.
Absolutely. So we got Kevin. He says, good morning, jabronis. Right? And then we have Pete Patron 5341. He said, Webhead Batman. So welcome. And like I said, guys, if you guys have any questions and you want to talk about anything, whether it has to do with financial stuff or if it has to do with comic books, we're here for you, and we'll go through it the best we can. All right.
We're here. I'm still here.
I'm back.
There we go.
Quick question. So yes, you've played tennis. Yes, you've taught tennis with me. We made a great team doing it.
We did.
So besides tennis, besides accounting, right, and the occasional movie watching, and what is your hobby? What do you like to do for fun?
That's, you mentioned that earlier. I was hoping I dodged out of that one because I'm like, oh, I passed through that. Mike didn't catch. I didn't bring it up, and you went back full circle on this one. It's
absolutely.
Because as you get older, you think, geez, having a hobby should be, as a kid, I had tons of hobbies and tons of things I did. And as you get older, you think, geez, you lose some hobbies. What do I do for my hobby? I mean, Trying to think. I mean, watching my kids play sports doesn't really count as a hobby. Travel, I mean, it's an odd. I don't know if that's considered a hobby, but I'd like to travel.
We consider it a hobby because
There
you
we
have
go.
definitely
Woo, I
traveled.
got it.
That is for sure.
We do a lot of traveling. My wife loves to travel. She has she has the idea, you know, in her head, and then, you know, I got to kind of steer her back because it seems like she'd go once a month if I could. But when I'm over in the UK, it's weird because she might say, let's go skiing over in Switzerland. I'm like, oh my God, that's ridiculous. Then you find out the ticket price is $90 and the hotel part and, you know, staying at the resort is, you can get like a shared resort. It's like $100 a day, and skiing, you know, $200 to rent the skis. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I can do all that for $500. It just, it boggles the mind because when you're in America, things cost so much more money.
Right.
That when you're in the UK, you're like, oh my God, I can do all that for that price. Yeah, it's not so bad to jump over and go skiing somewhere. But
right.
Traveling, you get to see new things. You know, we went on a cruise last week. Went over to we always do down to Puerto Rico, down to Dominican Republic, to Bahamas. We've done Mexico. I try and get away at least once a year, if not twice, to go somewhere and see new things. I got a friend of mine who lives in Spain. He owns a resort in Alicante, and he invites me every year to go see his resort and hang out with him. So that's a no-brainer. Why not, right?
Yeah. See, that's definitely a hobby. It's, you know, however you want to do it, you know. So it's pretty fun. I mean, shit, I wish I could travel. I mean, I'm not gonna lie.
I know.
You know, like my traveling is my daughter's dance competitions right now. So
yeah, you did a lot of those. She's still doing the dance, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Special shout out here to Only Good Comics, which is Brant, who is my co-host on Comic Book Weekly, which we're doing tonight, 10:15 or 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern. He is the one that came up with this graphic. He designed it. That's on there. So thank you, Brant, for doing this, especially last moment. I asked him for this task, and he's like, I'll do my best. And he did awesome with it. So thank you.
I say that's an amazing. We were just talking about the graphic earlier. The graphics are amazing. Great job on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we have is it Bang 4376? He says, "Hey Mike, and so welcome to the show." Yeah, so now that we got hobbies and stuff like that out of the way, let's talk about some stuff. So I think you still have a client that you actually do taxes for a comic shop. Am I right?
I do taxes for a comic book shop. And
what's the task for something like that?
What's that?
What like how demanding is that?
Yeah, it's interesting because everybody, well, I'm going to say outside of your group, but everybody thinks, you know, comics are just like the pieces of paper and there's no intrinsic value. I'm not talking about your group. I'm just talking about the outside world.
Right.
And there is an intrinsic value to them. So when it comes to comics, it's interesting. And this, I'm going to get a little dorky for a minute here, but when it comes to a business, and I'm going to talk about people that own a business and their sole purpose of the business is to sell comics to other people and to treat them as an investment. There's two rules when it comes to comic books. If the value of your comic is under $1,000 and you plan on selling that comic, you'd run it through as a current expense through your business. In other words, you buy it, you run it through as an expense, and then later on when you sell it, you've already expensed it. So the revenue you could buy it in December of 2025 and, you know, count the expense in 25, but sell it in 26. So your revenue is going to be off. You got to be careful if you're going to buy and sell, try and do it in the same year. So you buy it in 25, you got a great expense. 26, you count the revenue. But if you have a very, very valuable comic, let's say it's worth, I don't know, 5,000, or it's the original comic for Superman, like we talked about earlier, and it's worth several thousands of dollars, you can actually do something a little bit different. You can actually treat that as an asset. And this is where it gets kind of dorky here, but an asset is something you hold on your books. You don't actually expense it right away. You can expense it over time in chunks. Let's just say it's worth $10,000, right? You can then take that $10,000 first issue Superman. I'm not saying I know the price. I'm just
Right.
Right. Okay. Take that 10,000. You can take that chunk of money and you can write that off over a 5-year period so that when you do sell it, you're matching your revenue with your expense. In accounting, the big thing is matching revenues with expense. We want to make sure they're aligned to each other. So if you have a $10,000 comic, you can say, right, that's an asset. That's going to stay on my books as an asset. And I'm going to whittle away at that. They call it depreciation. I'll use depreciation and whittle away at $2,000 a year in chunks until it's sold or until it's down to zero. You could buy it in 25 and sell it in 29, and you can take that $2,000 a year. It's not exactly 2,000, but whatever, $2,000 a year using depreciation rules. And then you write it off over a longer period of time. Instead of, if you write it off all in 25 or 10,000, you sell it in 26 for 30,000. You got no expenses to offset it in 2026. So
Gotcha.
There's ways you can do things with comics. There's figurines, as you know, they're really expensive, valuable figurines. You have to make sure you account for those as inventory. So you have to do physical inventory counts. Oh, those are a nightmare for them.
So that's like, that aspect of it is a regular business, right? Like most businesses do have inventory, and you have to actually,
but they don't have boxes of my clients. I mean, when I first got into accounting, this is unrelated, but I had a fish and bait tackle store, and we had to do inventory on worms.
Oh my God. Crazy, man.
So we're like, okay, this box is night crawlers, this box is worm burners or whatever. And we're like, okay, I'm just going to take it for granted. You're telling me how many worms are in this box. I'm going to count you have 6 boxes of night crawlers, because I'm not. And then what we do in accounting is you have to do spot audits. So, okay, you say this box is 100 worms. Well, I'm just going to go and count at least 30 worms. And if it looks like there's more, I'll believe you there's 100. So, and I'm not equating worms to comic. I'm just making a silly story. But comics have a lot of boxes, as you know. So he would have, well, as you know, you as a collector, how many you have, but as a reseller, he has it by box. Now, you can't just say he has 1 comic or 2 comic. It's how many boxes you have. So you have to do inventory counts on your boxes of comics. Make sure they're in line to what the inventory should be, because a change in inventory can change your expense or your income. And that's getting a little bit deep, but you have beginning inventory plus your current purchases minus ending inventory. If your ending inventory is larger, you're going to have a differential in your expenses, and it's going to hurt your expense ratio. So you got to make sure your inventory count is on. Then you have figurines, figurines. Yeah. Those can be really big and expensive. So it's
some of those guys, some of those are worth like, the bigger ones are worth like $2,000, $3,000 that they go retail for. And then the shop has to obviously resell that. So do they mark that up to make a profit off of that?
Right. So what they're doing is 2 things. What they have to do is they have to take the value of the figurine, and then they have to take what they believe to be the shelf life. So in other words, if it's an exotic and unusual and rare figurine, let's say it's something that's not anybody has around, and it's something that maybe is really sought after and it's going to sell quick, their market, their up market can be a little bit thinner, because they're going to get it, they're going to sell it, they're going to turn it around. If the market's huge and they're the only one to have it, obviously they can go much higher on the profit ratio and increase it quite a bit. But if you have a figurine that comes in and sells quickly, let's say it's one that know it's going to sell within a week or a month, your margin is going to be thinner. But if you're going to hold on to something, it's going to be a very unusual one and hard to sell. They have to mark it up more because it's going to take up more shelf space, right? So not only that, if the value is, again, over a couple $1,000s, they can also treat that as an asset if they believe it's something that's going to stay on for 5 years and they're not going to sell it. Figurines don't usually last 5 years at his shop, so we don't treat them as assets, but they're still in inventory. You got to count as figurines. You got to count the boxes of comics. You got to count all the different accessories he has. It's a lot of work to have a comic book shop. It sounds like fun, and it is fun. He loves it. He's always at the different shows. If you see him anywhere, and it'd be all the Comic-Cons, he's always at all the big shows. But it's a lot of work, and there's competition, right? He's not the only one in town.
Absolutely. So yeah, I can only imagine if you're selling, for instance, like the graded comic books, right? Because those are the ones that tend to have more value. So say you're selling a book that's, graded and it's like $300, right? So
Right.
he's got to make a decision based off of like how much he wants to put on his taxes for that particular year, or spread it out, basically, like you're saying.
Right. And that's what it is. So the number to remember, and it's not hard and fast, but it's pretty close, is $1,000. That's kind of your benchmark. So if you're in business to sell your comics and your comics are worth over 1,000, you have a choice. Like remember those Which Way books back in the 80s?
Yeah.
Turn to page 23, turn to page 24.
Yeah. Choose your own adventure.
There we go. You got to choose your own adventure at that point when it's over 1,000. You can expense it, and I'm going to go nerdy, through something called Section 179, which you can expense it all right then. You can depreciate the whole thing, or you can do a maker's tax depreciation, which just call it 20% a year, a 5-year period, or whatever type of asset it is. You do the number of years, assume it's 5 years. You can choose that method and do it in chunks, right? 20%, 20%, 20%, figuratively speaking. That's that choice you have when it's worth more than 1,000. Does it happen? Yeah, you're going to have comics worth more than that. Sometimes the problem is he has a box and he doesn't know there's a comic worth over that amount because he buys in bulk, as you probably know. He says, "Look, I want that box." And what he does is he's taught me a technique or whatever. He's like thumb through it, and you want to pick up. You see 6 or 7 in there that secretly are worth a lot, and you're like, "Okay, I'll take these 6 boxes," because he already calculated in his head these 6 alone are going to be worth more than what he just paid for all of them.
Absolutely. That's what a lot of comic shops do. That's what a lot of individual sellers do as well, because there's a lot of people out there that just, they're sellers. Like they'll buy collections and they'll sell from their house. So they don't necessarily have a comic shop, but they kind of just like, hey, look, I have an Amazing Spider-Man issue 300, which is very sought out after, right? The book is like $600, and they'll go sell it to Mary Jo across the street. You know what I'm saying? And so I would think it's kind of got to be similar in that way as well, right? If you're like an individual seller, you got to claim your taxes that way too.
Well, and that's interesting. So what the rule, and I'm going to jump down into more someone who's doing it for a hobby or a small business. When it comes to small business rules, so if you have let's say you're selling comics, but you don't own like a corporation or an S corp or a partnership, and you're just doing it out of your house as a sole proprietor, we call it.
Right.
There's a rule with the government about that says, and this is a lot of people don't know this, if you take a loss on your taxes for 3 years, you then permanently become a hobby, and you can no longer take expenses against your income. So what happens, a lot of these small businesses don't come to see me. They're like, "Oh yeah, I've been taking losses, 2 years now, and I'm about to take another loss again on my sole proprietorship or self-employed return." And I'm like, "Oh, don't do that, because as soon as you do that, the government considers you a hobby, and then you're no longer allowed to take expenses on your businesses, because a real business owner who's doing a small business, you can't survive taking losses 7 years, 3 years, 2 years in a row,
right?
3-4 years in a row.
You got to show some kind of profit,
exactly.
Even if it's a couple $100 or $1,000. Is there a threshold?
There is there is no threshold. So what the rule of the IRS says, if you're a small sole proprietor business, you don't own a corporation, you can't take a loss 3 years in a row. So that means you could take $5,000 loss year 1, $10,000 loss in year 2. Then in year 3, you can take $100 in income, then back to 5,000 loss,
Gotcha.
10,000 loss, $100 income. But what you want to do is you want to show that you're trying to make money. You want to show that there's
growth,
revenue stream. But some people like to do a little side business like that, and it's possible to do. You can do it, and then if you get passionate enough, then you start up a little company, and you don't have to be selling to the greater public through like my client does, but you could be selling out of your garage and have a little business out of that.
So for instance, right, I do annual garage sale once a year, right? So now it's just a garage sale. I'm looking to make, a lot of times I'll make like $1,000. Nice. I sell these books for like $0.25, so should I claim that on my taxes?
Well, with your business, I'm not assuming, but I'm assuming that your Comic Book Corner or what you're doing here as an entity, bigger picture would be considered a business for you on your taxes. And I assume you do it as a sole proprietor, and I don't want to pry too much, but let me just assume that you don't have an S corporation or a partnership.
No, correct.
So what you want to do then is part of your business, or someone like you, you'd want to take the cost of those comics and put it into your business, into the Comic Book Corner. And then you would then show the revenue from selling those, let's say $1,000 at your garage sale, but you got behind the scenes, you're buying comics every week.
Correct.
Right? You're buying comics every single week. That's going to go into your pipeline of expenses. So your $1,000 of revenue and whatever your streaming revenue is and YouTube revenue, let's say that adds up, you're still gonna have the offsetting of the actual cost of your comics you buy every week. And I'm only guessing that you're sitting in a space that's not rented. I assume it's in a home. I don't want to say where it is or anything.
A lot of people, my viewers know that it's in my garage.
Okay, all right. I don't want to say. Don't say it's a secret location.
There's not a rented space, but yes, correct.
Yeah, so you could use a part of your home as an expense. You could use mileage to drive to the comic book store to pick up the comics. You could use office supplies. Like I see the lights back there. Those would be a deduction. I'm looking at whenever I look at you, I'm like, oh, the picture frame around the comics, an expense. The lights he has around there are an expense. The chair he's sitting is an expense. Like, that's what I do. I go into like stores and I'm like, I have a disease. I start breaking everything down into like, what's expense, what's deductible. I'm like, I got a problem.
Right.
The desk, the computer. Yeah. All deductible.
So basically, like, so you go from the comic shop business, right? And then you go to the, what's it called? Then you go to the actual other side of things where it's like, oh yeah, if I wanted to do like a YouTube channel or sell comics off on the side, then you can kind of put all that stuff together. So
because all the same umbrella. What clients do sometimes, like, yeah, I have a small business, I breed dogs and I sell cars, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's the same business. I'm like, what are you talking? Like, when you go to start a business up, there's what they call a business code. So if you've done a Schedule C, you'll know in the upper left-hand corner, there's a 6-digit NAISC code, and you have to say what the topic is. What kind of business is it? And if you're breeding dogs and doing cars, they're not related. But doing a YouTube
breeding the dogs in the cars?
No, breeding dogs and selling cars. I have a client. I'm like, what? That's the same business. I'm like, how are they in the same business? You're breeding dogs and you're selling cars. No. But what you choose is something like, YouTube, or streaming, or whatever it is related to comics, and then you're selling comics. That is a comparable business where you could use the purchasing of the comics and the selling of the comics in line to the cost of doing your YouTube, whatever it costs to stream your YouTube, and I see all the posters behind you and the computer desk you're sitting at. That's all related there. You could aggregate those kind of expenses together.
Gotcha. So it's good to know, because for others out there that are looking to start a possible YouTube channel out there, a lot of people, number one, are afraid to just do it, right? And then they're afraid of the expense side of things, like, oh, do I have to file taxes? Do I not have to file taxes? And there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that you do have to file taxes when you do this. Like, YouTube sends you a form in the mail saying that you have to file taxes, and then people find out that. People find that out, and they're just like, oh my God, so now that I have to pay taxes on YouTube, like, what do I do now? And so by you telling me and others out there that are watching this stream, like, you can claim all this stuff on your taxes.
Yeah, let me explain how that works. You got to be careful, and I'll speak to the audience as well through you. What's happening in 2026 is the criteria to issue 1099s has changed. So what it used to be is, if you'd go through Venmo, or you go through Cash App, or you go through, I'm just trying to get them Zelle, different methods to send money. They used to view that as just sending money back and forth to friends. But what they're doing now is they're cracking down even on that device, those devices, those monetary, transfer sites. If you start breaking the thresholds that they have set in place, if you mark the transfer a certain way, you could be getting a 1099 if you sent money to your friend. or if you receive money for comics. You have to be very, very careful when you use those Cash App services. I know there's one called
That's
Cash App.
crazy to me
So be
because
very careful, right? Because if you get, let's say you're somebody in your audience is selling comics and they get one-time sale of
I don't know if you can still hear me, but your Wi-Fi is breaking up. All right. Well, I guess Craig's internet just went out for a second in the middle of his speech there. So I apologize for that. So hopefully he can get back on here. You got to love technology, of course, right? So I just want to say thanks, guys, for tuning into the show. I know that it's a new show and it takes a little time to get growth, but I want you to let me know what you want to know more about in this show going forward. We're going to be doing this show monthly. We're probably going to talk about other things as well. So just let me know. Greg's back on. There you go. Your internet's back on.
I'm so sorry, guys.
That's
No,
all
what
right.
I was saying is you got to be careful because once you get a 1099 for over 600, you have to now file a self-employed tax return. No matter whether you think you need to or not, it's now happened. And now you're become into the foray of being a small business owner. So be careful. It can happen very, very easily nowadays.
So this is weird. Besides YouTube stuff aside, right?
Mhm.
What if my wife is just transferring money to her friends to pay like a meal back or something like that? So
Right.
like it's like her friends like pay for my daughter's like dinner and she's like,
Yep.
"Okay, here's your $50 back." Like,
Right.
does that get taxed too? This is
So
completely off the rails, but I'm just curious on that.
I'm doing this to scare people, not on purpose, but to kind of educate through a scary way. But when you send money, and I was just trying to get through one of the devices, when you send money, and I believe it's Venmo or if it's Cash App, I believe it's Venmo, it asks you what you're doing it for, and you
Uh-huh.
have to make sure you're saying for personal reasons. But when you go there and let's say you do sell your comics for $600 to Michelle down the street, I'm just using the same example again. You need then to trigger it to say this is for business purposes, because if you get enough transactions over 600 in that size increment, that's the trigger. The government's going to then look into you to say, look, you're getting $600, $1,000, these large quantities over and over again, and you're marking them personal. They can then look, that then gives you the right to look into you to say why you're getting such large transfers. But like you said in your example, getting money for your wife for reimbursing for meals, when you use Venmo or Cash App, you have to choose for personal reasons. Otherwise, that could trigger a 1099.
So what if I was, going down the street and I talked to Michelle because Michelle's a very
And
famous
the
comic book
salesperson in
person,
town,
right?
there she is.
And she's like, "Oh, I want to buy this Green Lantern issue 28, but it's not
Ooh,
$600. Say it's like $35, right? And
okay.
it's a sought
Okay.
after comic. It's a minor key issue, right? Got a first appearance of a character. So what happens then?
What she would do when she goes through Venmo, you'd want her to hit the button that says this is business, not personal, because you want that to show up on your books, because you'll
Uh-huh.
need income and revenue. In order to show you're a viable business, you got to show money coming into the business, and you won't get a 1099, but it still doesn't mean you can't report it on your taxes. So
Okay.
we do bookkeeping for clients, right? We do monthly books for clients. 99 out of 100% of our clients, the 1099s that they receive never match the revenue we show in the books, because we'll show more. Not every client that works for them is going to send them a 1099. They'll send me their 1099s, go, okay, make sure that's on my return. I'm like, I put those in the garbage. I don't even look at those because I know I'm reporting your revenue from your bank account, which is inevitably going to be higher than your 1099s, because not every person sends you one. So in this case with Michelle, with the Green Lantern, you'd want to use your bank account to say, I got 30 into my bank account. I'm going to show that as revenue. even know I didn't get a 1099.
Gotcha.
But the opposite could happen where you could send it, just someone could sell a comic book and you could find out that you're going to get a 1099. You didn't even expect it because it's over 600.
So if I have a cumulative of those small transactions like there, that can set off 1099 as well, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you were to buy from a person and cumulatively you were to pay more than 600, you could also send them a 1099 and treat that as, you know, on your books to show that as an expense. It works both ways. When you're a business owner, it's a good thing. But when you're the average collector or someone who doesn't expect to get a 1099, be careful. And starting in 2026, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, why am I getting a 10? I've never got one in the past. And that's where having like an accountant or talking to somebody can help to say, look, here's what to do not to get one. Or if you should be getting one, here's how to do a self-employed business return. But be careful. It's coming down the pipeline really soon.
Right. That's what I think that's why a lot of a lot of dealers, like, they pay cash for their stuff. You know what I'm saying? You see, that's how it goes. They're just like, hey man, here's
on the DL.
Yeah, take it on the down low, you know. That's the way it goes. That's kind of funny. There was one question in here that well, this was from before, and it's from Crypto HBK. He said, what happens if an asset's fair market value increases?
Okay, so what we do is we treat the assets. So again, we're going to take this comic book, the $10,000 comic book. Let's say you put it in the books for $10,000, right? And we expect the asset's fair market value to grow. So you got a $10,000 comic book you bought in 2020. Let's use a good one. So you bought it in 2021. And you plan on selling it this year. You bought it for $8,000, but now it's worth $10,000. You'll have then written off that asset over the last 5 years in increments of, I shouldn't have done that because now I got to do math, but whatever it is, $1,600 a year over the last 8 years, the $8,000 you bought it for. But when you sell it, the fair market value is represented as your current revenue when you sell it. So you don't have to adjust the fair market value on your books every year. And as a matter of fact, you really shouldn't, because when you put it on your books, you're putting it at the cost of the day you bought it, and you're depreciating off of that cost. Okay. Once you start depreciating an asset, once you start depreciating a comic book or a figurine, let's put it in different terms, you can't change it and say, well, it increased this much this year. Well, it doesn't matter. You're writing it off based on what you paid for it. When you sell it, the day you sell it here now in 2025, you sell that $8,000 comic book, now is worth 10. That's when you recognize the fair market value on the date of sale. So the Crypto HBK, if you're talking about figurines and comics, you don't recognize the increase in fair market value because it's sitting as an asset. Now, if you're talking, so that's different. That's mark to market. And in that world, in the stock world, mark to market is applicable to cryptocurrency, and you got to show that value change year over year for crypto. But for regular stocks, same thing. You hold that. It's called your cost basis. If you're familiar with stocks, the same thing with comics. It's called a cost basis, and that sits as a permanent number. And then the value of it may increase over time, and that's recognized on the day you sell it. The difference between what you sell it for and what your value is, whether it's depreciated or not, that is what they call the gain, the capital gain on that asset.
Gotcha. Now, you are still with the comic shop, right? You still work with them. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you are familiar, but the market for comic books has taken a pretty significant dive. So what happens now at this point for the comic shop owner when his comics now have decreased in value? How does he handle that?
Well, that's a good point. So he has two different types of comics. Usually he has his comics as he goes worth, let's say, like he said, he'll find 6 or 7 in a box and go, right, those values on my head are worth more than I'm paying for this box. I know it's worth it. So those comics may have reduced down in price, but the everyday comics he has, the boxes and boxes of everyday comics he has, haven't really changed much in value, because in his mind, they're a sunk cost. They're almost like worth nothing in his head, because he paid, let's say, $1,000 for a box. I'm using round numbers.
Right.
And let's say in that box, he has 6 things that are worth $1,200. He's going to pull those out. Now that box is almost zero to him. right? It's worth
Correct.
nothing because he's already got the 1,200 out. What he can do now during the lean times, he can take those boxes in his mind worth nothing. And even if he gets $200 or $100, he can dig into those old boxes and start selling those boxes in his mind that are worth nothing. And that money can help him kind of survive up until that $1,200 comic is worth $1,200 again. So it's almost like you got to sell off the lean times. Not saying the ones that are worth less, you know what I mean? The ones that are worth little and they're large. And that's why he has such a large inventory and quantity. So he can sell off those ones in the lean time, hang on to the valuable ones till they increase, and he can kind of make his bread, so to say, through his boxes of comics. And you know that he's already had a sunk cost from them because he's got his money out of that box. So anything he makes is nothing. That's gravy.
This is what I would have to say. What if now this is obviously the shop's owner decision, right? He has to make a decision. Do I sell those books that were once higher? Do I sell them for a cheaper cost, or do I sell them? Do I try to make more money of it? Like, do you just try to move it at that point? I mean, a good business practice would be like, you know, try to sell it for what it's worth now, right? That's what I would
be. And that's what you try and do is you try and get rid of as much inventory as you can that's already sunk in his cost, that's already paid for, to the point in which you're just down to lean nothingness. And you're like, wow, I have like 2 boxes of comics left. I had 100 last year. I've sold them off. I've now then you got to dig into the big stuff. And you can't hold on to that stuff forever. You still got to pay your staff. You still got rent. You still got overhead. You got payroll. That's the hard part about the comic side of the business is there's 2 kinds of costs in business. There's variable costs, which are you buying comics or not buying comics. That's variable. And there's fixed costs. No matter what you do, as soon as you open the door, you're going to have payroll. You're going to have taxes. You're going to have rent. You're going to have heat. You're going to have electricity. There's a variable. There's a certain amount of fixed costs. You got to at least meet those to kind of survive. And then from there, then you get into your variable costs. Maybe I don't buy a box of comics this month because I can't afford it. Maybe I don't buy that figurine. And that's where you got to curb the expenses, sell off your boxes of sunk cost comic books. And when those 2 meet, and when you sold off all your things and you've lowered your expenses and you're at the middle, then you got to start selling those valuable comics off and take a loss, and it hurts. I know he hates to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so pretty cool conversation right here. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it up because my water softener has gone off and it's like loud and annoying. And I got a ton of neighbors for some reason, like walking their dogs right now and they're barking. So doesn't make it for very smooth podcast.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, though, we went on for like almost an hour here.
Did Benning say something? Benning underneath above crypto. I don't know if you can highlight Benning.
Oh, he said there was a part where you were talking and he said debit and credit.
Yeah. So just to give you, and this is going to be super nerdy, but debits and credits are where the numbers live in the world of accounting, and debits hold 2 parts. Debits are your expenses. So there's 2 reports that bookkeeper accountants create. There's one called a profit and loss report, which is your revenue minus expenses to get you to what's left over at the end of the day, what's taxable. And then there's a balance sheet, which shows what you own versus what you owe. Own and owe, assets, liabilities. In debits house expenses, strangely enough, and assets. They expense the bad stuff on the profit side of things, their expenses. They store the good stuff on the balance sheet side, which are assets. Credits store revenue, which is the good thing on the profit and loss side, and they store the bad stuff on the balance sheet liabilities. So they're totally backwards. And when you go to an accountant and say, I'm going to go use my debit card, because we've used debits as, I'm getting a debt. We view debits different than banks. So debits to us are expenses on your profit and loss, and they're assets, your figurines, your comics that you own. Those are debited as an asset. But that's, I don't know, debit and credit in a nutshell. I don't know if I confused or helped, but that's the world of debits and credits.
That's funny.
Sorry.
All right. So did you have a good time?
It was great. I think we should do it more often. And with tax season coming up.
Yeah, of course, your internet's acting up now.
Usually our Our period right now is doing tax projections. We get people ready for the end of the year because what I don't like to see is surprises. So we do a year-to-date analysis to say if they're going to owe taxes, and then they pay in an estimate by January 15th. So we're busy now helping people if they need help doing projections, and then come February we do taxes. So anytime you want to meet, it'd be great to do this once a month.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do this, and then we'll go into a little bit more like topic. I mean, we went into a pretty good topic discussion today about owning a comic shop and whatnot. To future episodes, we could talk about like obviously be more of the individual seller, or
let's go into small business
of certain comic books and stuff like that. And so anybody that watches this post live, let me know in the comments section what you want to see out of this show. It gives us kind of like a month to prepare, and then we can discuss it on future episodes.
I love that idea.
Yeah,
that's
so
great.
It was great.
Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it, Mike. It's always good talking to you and meeting your fans and your followers. You got a lot of followers. They're really great. What a nice group you have.
It's awesome. So one more time, why don't you promote your the business and let people know, and let them know your YouTube channel as well.
Yeah. So my business is Crestville Accounting, and we're online at www.crestvilleaccounting.com. We are starting a podcast channel called Behind Closed Books, and that can be found on YouTube. They're going to be dropping on Spotify and Apple Play soon, and you can watch I think we have 4 out right now, if I'm not mistaken. And there'll be more to come once a week or once a month. Producers do the dropping of the episodes. I just record them. So I think it's weekly or monthly. And then you can get a hold of me. My email is crestvilleaccounting.com. It's CRESTVILLE, crestvilleaccounting.com. And any questions you want to bring up, talk to Mike about future episodes, or if you have specific questions, definitely feel free to reach out.
Awesome. And then our final comment of the day goes to Brant, who said, enjoyed the first episode, guys. Looking forward to the series. Some good information here. And that's what we're providing. So it's a little mix of comics and nerdy accounting talk. So, it's something that you would never think about on this channel. But nevertheless, like I said, it's a good way to kind of bring both together. And thank you so much for watching, everybody. So as always, if you have not subscribed to my channel, please go ahead, subscribe, Comic Book Corner 2.0. Don't forget to hit the notification bells so you don't miss anything from me. And then again, don't forget to subscribe to your channel as well, Craig, right? And same thing.
Thank you, guys.
Behind Closed Books. So guys, thank you for watching, and we will see you in about a month from now. Take care, everyone.
Take care. Bye.